means that the number one pick in the 2021 NBA draft goes to the Detroit Pistons.
Who's got the number one pick in this year's draft? Who's got the number one pick in this year's draft?
Basketball!
Select Isaiah Stewart.
The Detroit Pistons select Killian Hayes.
Sadiq, that was absolutely sensational.
I don't know what went into that process. I met the criteria to be selected, but I wasn't.
From long range. Oh! Yes!
Detroit basketball! Pistons fans, welcome back to another edition of the Palace of Pistons Podcast, part of the Believe Podcast Network. I'm your host, Mike Anguilano, and joining me as always is Aaron Johnson and Jasper Apollonia. Fellas, how we doing on this trade deadline day?
Oh, Aaron, Mike, happy Jerami Grant bobblehead night to you.
What a happy coincidence that is.
Well, yeah,
were able to run that promotion after 3 o'clock pass. They were very confident to send out that tweet after that 3 o'clock deadline. So
I am like living. I wish I could see into the alternate universe where Jerami Grant did get traded and they still went ahead with the Jerami Grant bobblehead night. Or what would they have done with all those bobbleheads? They give them out to people in like Africa, like they do with Super Bowl loser T-shirts or something like that.
That's exactly it.
Some kid in Kenya running around with his prized Jerami Grant bobblehead.
Yeah, and he has his either a Bengals or a Rams Super Bowl victory shirt that's going to be coming in the mail in like 2 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's exactly what happens.
Well, luckily,
happy coincidence.
He'll never have to have a Detroit Lions one because they'd have to make it there first. So,
right. We find some way to throw a little bit of Lions shade into this podcast every week, and I'm glad that we got that out of the way in the 2-minute mark of this pod. Guys, I want to start off with our one of our lovely sponsors just to get this moving and get us on track. Our first sponsor, as always, is BetOnline, and BetOnline is back better than ever with a new web interface for the Super Bowl basketball season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. The Super Bowl, I can't believe it's already Sunday. BetOnline remains your number one spot for all the basketball and football action this season. Head on over to the new updated desktop or mobile website and sign up today. Get your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit using promo code BLEAV50. That's BLEAV50 on your first deposit. Get 50% welcome bonus. From basketball, football, NHL, boxing, and UFC, right to your favorite Vegas casino games. Don't wait to take advantage of all the amazing offers available for the 2022 season. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way to bet all of your favorite sports. And again, that 50% welcome bonus code is BLEAV50. BLEAV50. BetOnline, where the game starts.
It's going to be interesting to see how the lines end up shaking out with all the trades that happened earlier today. I mean, obviously you feel like the teams that'll mainly be affected are Philadelphia and Brooklyn. And I know we're going to talk about that trade a little later, but I think that's definitely, betting related, something that I'm interested in seeing. I don't know how soon we get those numbers, maybe tomorrow.
Yeah, the problem is that occasionally you'll have the Portland Trailblazers who rolled out at least 4 players I didn't know and then beat the Lakers with LeBron and Anthony Davis. So really, it's just a total crapshoot at this point.
It really is. It really is. But I'm excited to get into all of this trade talk and the trades that didn't happen talk. So
yes.
I think without further ado, I think
let's start.
Ready
let's
to go.
Start with the big blockbuster of the day. I don't think anybody saw this coming. Certainly not something we talked about months ago. Blockbuster as part of a 14 trade. It kicked off the trade deadline day, and it started off with the Pistons, a 4-team trade. The Pistons acquired Marvin Bagley III for Josh Jackson, Trey Lyles, and 2 second-round picks. The whole 4-team trade does have some implications for the Eastern Conference. Dante DiVincenzo goes from the Bucks to the Kings. The Kings also picked up Lyles and Jackson in that move. The Bucks get Serge Ibaka, 2 future second-round picks. The Clippers add wings like it's their job with Robbie Hood and Semi Ojeleye. And the Pistons, of course, get Marvin Bagley III. I think Woj put Jr. in there, but it is Marvin Bagley III. His father's the junior, and he's the one that's vocal on Twitter saying his son needs to get the heck out of Sacramento. So that kicked off the deadline day. This is a move that was really premeditated for months. We talked about it before. It took until the deadline day to get it done, but the Pistons have a buy low sort of player in Marvin Bagley. Unfortunately, maybe remembered most for going ahead of Trey Young and Luka Doncic, but a nice opportunity to restart his career after the really toxic tenure with the Sacramento Kings. Jasper, I'm going to go to you first for this move. Do you have any? Well, I mean, we kind of already had initial thoughts like boiling for like 2 months, but seeing this as part of the 14 trade, the Pistons do send out a couple other players and picks. What were your early returns on that move?
Well, I mean, this has been something that we have been talking about for months since I believe, I mean, maybe even before Hamidou Diallo got benched in that game against the Kings, if you'll remember. And it's interesting because this is essentially the trade package we all thought they were going to throw together for Marvin Bagley. Maybe there was a chance it was going to be somebody like Corey Joseph instead of Trey Lyles, but it seemed pretty clear that this was something that both the Pistons and the Kings had interest in for months. I think it's exactly the type of move they need to be making. For the Kings, it makes sense. Trey Lyles right now, as of this season, has played better than Marvin Bagley. That's, I think, pretty undeniable. It also makes sense for them to, get a couple second rounders, move those around. That's fine. We know Troy Weaver doesn't care about those. He throws second round picks around like, I don't know, like James Harden in a strip club, throws dollar bills, which he'll be doing in Philadelphia now. But yeah, I think it makes a lot of sense for Detroit to do this. They need high upside guys. This is exactly Troy Weaver's MO. He likes to get rid of, his undervalued veteran players for undervalued young players. And if they can convince Marvin Bagley to be an inside out kind of player, unlike Trey Lyles, who is more of an outside in type of player, and have him run the pick and roll with Killian Hayes and Cade Cunningham, I think that there's a lot of potential here for this to be a pairing that works. Bagley is a really good offensive rebounder, and I think that when you have him and Isaiah Stewart both there, you can switch up those minutes without losing much on the glass, which was an issue with Lyles. And I think at the same time, you also have a different look offensively to somebody like Isaiah Stewart. So I think this is a good trade, and I don't see a whole lot of downside to it, which is exactly what the Pistons need to be doing right now.
Yeah, I mean, as you said, this is, the prototypical Troy Weaver move that we've seen him make throughout his tenure. Josh Jackson, Hamidou Diallo, just a couple of those names that come to mind, those guys that, maybe hadn't fully panned out in the league yet, but had shown some potential. And a guy like Jackson, who was a former top pick in the draft, Bagley falls under that same kind of situation. So, I think it was a really smart trade by Detroit. Again, you didn't really give up much. I know some people were flustered over a pair of second round picks, but the second round picks just don't really matter. Those are a dime a dozen. You can get them for pennies on the dollar. You can get them for cash. I mean, you can go into a draft and acquire a second round pick for cash if you really want to on draft night. So I didn't really think those mattered. Marvin Bagley's a guy that has upside. I know it's not fully, found yet. I know he's had his struggles in Sacramento, but I think you also have to look at it's not fair to fully just judge a player if they spent all their career in Sacramento so far. Like Sacramento does not deserve any benefit of the doubt in this situation. They don't have a good record of developing players and putting players in positions to succeed. So, I think that in itself matters. And I don't know if Bagley is necessarily going to turn out to be a good player, a rotation player down the line, but the potential is there. And, he doesn't shoot the three ball very well. He is trying, and, he has shown a willingness to shoot the ball. So it's a development that hopefully continues to progress. He's probably, and this is something that's probably pretty unfortunate for the Pistons, but he's probably better off as a 4 rather than a 5, especially on the defensive side of the floor. But there's still a reason to go out and make a trade for him. And, salute to Trey Lyles, who, as Laz Jackson pointed out on Twitter, was this year's, Delon, right? Play yourself up in value to where you can get traded for, a young player with potential. I think was Delon, right? Part of the Dennis Smith Jr. trade, or maybe he was part of a different trade.
He was part of the Corey Joseph trade. How soon we forget, Aaron?
Oh, that's right. That was with Sacramento too.
With Sacramento, absolutely. And you know what? Here's another little small factual tidbit. Marvin Bagley was the second overall pick. His grandfather, Jumpin' Joe Caldwell, was also the second overall pick for guess who back in 1964? The Detroit Pistons. So it all comes full circle in a way.
Yeah, I guess it does. But I guess just to wrap it up, I definitely like the move. They didn't give up anything that really matters in a vacuum for this team moving forward. And you've got plenty of time, throughout the rest of the season to work with Marvin Bagley, see what he can do. He does have some stuff in his contract where if he starts 41 games or plays 2,000 minutes, he is eligible for a higher paid contract when he becomes eligible for an extension later this season. But that shouldn't be a problem for Detroit. He's only started 17 games this season.
He'd have to play literally every game for the rest of the year, right?
Right. He's only played 656 minutes. So he would have to play, like every minute possible. And that's just not going to happen. So, I think that was something that was probably kept in mind, both as Sacramento decided whether or not to play him throughout the year, because that was going to play a factor in this trade. Having to, if you wanted to re-sign Bagley down the line, that money would have been much more significant had he met those thresholds, the minutes threshold or the started games threshold. So I guess that also worked out for Detroit in that aspect as well. But overall, I do like this move for the Pistons. I feel like they got a good prospect to take a swing on. The number 2 overall pick, obviously, like you mentioned, he's going to be remembered for being that guy that went ahead of Luka Doncic and Trey Young. But who knows? There's still plenty of time for him to turn his career around. He's just 22 years old. He's only played 148 NBA games, and I do think there is something there. And the Pistons needed more depth in the front court, a little bit more athleticism, which is something that he brings. And I'm interested to see how he plays over, the rest of the season, with the All-Star break coming up, and then really after that.
And I'll say this as well, Aaron. The last kind of thing is I'm assuming he's going to come off the bench alongside Kelly Olynyk. And like you said, I do believe that his best defensive position, he's not a very good defender, but I do believe his best defensive position is going to be at the power forward, which for me actually is a positive because you can then put Olynyk at center where you had Trey Lyles playing defensively the last few weeks. So I think in some ways this actually helps them out in terms of defensive versatility. You add more athleticism to that front court as well on defense. And offensively, I think also now it allows you to play Olynyk outside a little bit more, take advantage of his three-point shooting when you're trying to spread the floor. And hopefully, like I said, they will have Marvin Bagley playing inside out versus outside in because he hasn't been a very good three-point shooter. What you want him to be doing is going towards the basket with whoever, your point guard is in pick and roll. You don't want him doing the Trey Lyles thing and standing on the perimeter, pump faking, and then driving to the basket. That's the opposite of what you want from him. So it's also going to be interesting to see how Dwayne Casey utilizes Marvin Bagley, because that's going to be, in my opinion, crucial to whether this is a success or a failure coming into the last few months of this NBA season.
Guys, that's good stuff. I agree. He's probably more of a 4 than a 5, or he definitely is. He is noticeably having a worse season this year with Sacramento. But Aaron, like you said, when I look at his numbers, I don't know how much you could actually take as like what you're going to be getting with the Pistons, because it has just been such an up and down environment for Marvin Bagley that I don't know exactly what you can take from any of those things, because there was turmoil constantly happening, whether it was change in coach or it was the personnel or it was the front office constantly being, a revolving door of people. coming in. So it's difficult to take the numbers and, glean anything as what you're going to be getting with Detroit. I mean, he's going to be playing with a good point guard. If he's playing with the second unit, he's still going to have a good playmaking point guard with them. So it's really a matter of, how they bring him in slowly. He does have a good skill set that I think will be nice to have at 6'11", be nice to have a rim runner. And he does have some athleticism, as well. He doesn't turn the ball over a tremendous amount. It'll just be nice to have another young guy that the Pistons can look at, and really think think about what they could use moving into next year and beyond. And I did read that they are looking to extend him, and you had mentioned the minutes and games played clause. Certainly the Pistons will keep it in the under, so his qualifying offer is lower. But they do appear to be ready to, extend him at a reasonable amount. So this was a move that was more in the works for a while. I agree, the 2 second-round picks or whatever. I don't understand the people who glorify the draft picks. We don't know what those draft picks are going to be. So saying that it was too much to give up is, to me, inaccurate. Josh Jackson was already on the outs. It seemed he was the odd man out. We noted that in our season preview. And then Trey Lyles, we all sort of questioned. He is the opposite, of a typical big, like Jasper, you said, he works outside in, being a stretchy 4. So those players seem like they were ripe to be moved anyway. The 2 picks are kind of tough, but it is what it is. I think the Kings really made out well in this trade overall. I think getting Dante DiVincenzo is a really nice move.
They did
keeps
great.
Their playoff push. I'm sorry.
They did great. Dante DiVincenzo is a huge piece for them, and they gave away nothing. Like Marvin Bagley doesn't play for them. They did great. And I think people are going to look. I think people are going to look back at that Sabonis trade at the end of the season, and even going into next year. And I think that trade is actually going to age very well for them. If they can add some shooters and guys like Dante DiVincenzo, they're going to, I really do think, yes, Tyrese Halliburton's a talented player, but the Kings did well. They got the best player in that trade. Like they did. Sabonis is the best player right now.
Definitely. I wanted to talk about that. I don't know if we were going to get into that trade later, but I did want to say real quick about that the reaction on Twitter to the Tyrese Halliburton, Domantas Sabonis trade was absolutely, for lack of a better word, awful. I wanted to use a little bit of a stronger word, but people treated that trade as if Tyrese Halliburton is the future MVP and Sabonis is a washed up, old, not good player. Like Sabonis is in his prime. He puts up double doubles like it's nothing. He's a triple double threat. He can score from inside and out. He's a great rebounder. He's a great passing big. It was just incredibly horrible how people reacted to that trade. I mean, I get it if you like Tyrese Halliburton. I like him too. He's a really nice young piece, but let's not act like Sabonis is unscrubbed. He's a very, very good player, and Sacramento is going to really benefit from having him. Like, Aaron, I just thought that was awful.
People act like 2012 and 5 guys like grow on trees or something. Like Sabonis is so good. And I saw, was one thing I saw yesterday on Twitter. Somebody said he's a ball-stopping big. Ball-stopping big. Post big. And I'm like, dude, you even watch the guy? He has a mid-range game that is absolutely deadly. He averaged almost 7 assists per game last year. Like, what are we doing here? He is a 2-time All-Star, literally based on the strength of his numbers just being too good to include somebody else over him. They never want to put him in the All-Star game. They always want to put like Andre Drummond in instead. But every year he comes out and he's putting up, like I said, like 20, 12, and 5 assists. And you just can't deny those kind of numbers. Him and Fox are going to be great together. Like Fox slashing to the basket. Sabonis is just going to murder everyone on the boards, get all those putbacks, open up space in the lane. It's going to work. It's going to work pretty well.
You saw it in the first game. The very first game, he's, able to operate and pass out of the high post. He's behind, the 3-point line, watching guys cut, get around pin downs, and is able to make the accurate passes to score. His impact is already there. And a lot of those Kings players are going to be shocked at how many more open opportunities at the hoop they have just because Sabonis is a good passer.
He's great. He's a great seal out player too. I want to say that Sabonis does great work in the post, sealing out defenders to get his guys layups. That's an underrated skill. I
also saw that his face is an elbow magnet. Apparently he takes a lot of elbows to the face. I have not exactly noticed that, but apparently his face is an elbow magnet. I thought that was pretty funny. That's Mark Schindler of many different Pacers sites who had that. Shout out to Mark. So yeah, and I was one of the people that was like, Tyrese Halliburton, how on earth? I think the vitriol from that is because we're not used to the Kings making good draft picks. So when they finally make one and then they trade him away, you're like, oh, what the heck? Now we have to wait another 6 years for the Kings to make a decent draft pick. That may have had something to do with, I think he's also just like an NBA Twitter darling type of player. Joe Ingles used to be that. Like everyone loved Joe Ingles because he was like the perfect 3-and-D type of guy. And if you didn't think that Joe Ingles was good, then you were a dumb NBA fan. Tyrese Halliburton kind of wedged his way in it as that new role type of, NBA Twitter darling player. He's very good. And the Pacers might be the secret winners at the deadline for getting Halliburton and all these draft picks and other assets that they could easily keep flipping. They didn't move Buddy Hield like some people thought, but they kept Miles Turner. So, I mean, overall, I thought the Pacers did super well, but you're right. The just backwards mentality of why did the Kings do this is just absurd. They got the best player in the deal. And, if they make the play-in, I don't really think that counts as making the playoffs, but I think you have to actually make the playoffs and not the play-in to, for it to count, but we'll see what they do. Guys, any other thoughts before we move on from the Marvin Bagley, obviously the gigantic Marvin Bagley trade?
My last thing would be, I'm really excited to see that second unit with Bagley, Hamidou Diallo, and Killian Hayes there to throw some lobs, as well as Kelly Olynyk. I actually think that, the second unit has been, it's been brutal over the last couple of weeks, to be honest. They've just been getting killed. And, it's hard to put all the blame on one guy, but a lot of that has been because Kelly Olynyk has not been very good. I think now that you have two really athletic players in Diallo and Marvin Bagley, it's even more put up or shut up time for Killian Hayes. Like, these are two players that hypothetically should work with his skill set, along with Kelly Olynyk, who's another really good passer and a 3-point threat. So I expect bigger and better things from this Pistons second unit. That is for sure.
Aaron, how much are you willing to, invest into Marvin Bagley as a core piece for this team moving forward?
I think that really just depends on how he plays over the rest of this season. I don't know if you can call him a core piece as of now. I mean, he hasn't had a ton of success. I know he's playing better as of late. But I don't think you can look at this trade and say, hey, we know we just got a core piece. I think you got a guy that is probably out of all of the additions that you've made, like in terms of similar style moves, the Josh Jackson, the Hamidou Diallo type trades. This is probably a guy that has the most upside out of that group, but I would not say right now he's for sure one of the guys that you're building this team around. Right. But I think, the rest of the year would give you a much better idea of that and how he fits.
So probably not somebody worth investing in right now, just want to see how he plays first.
I agree. Yeah, absolutely.
So in terms of, investing, what I'm about to say might shock you, but the greatest quarterback of all time is not just a goat on the field. He's a goat when it comes to investing too. He invests in stocks, crypto, and even art. And now you can invest like the GOAT with Masterworks, which is our new sponsor for this week. Masterworks is the investing platform that lets you buy shares representing an investment in art from icons like Picasso, Monet, and Warhol. Art prices actually outpaced the S&P 500 by 164% from 92 to 2021. It's pretty sad that like 85% of the people in our Pistons chat weren't even, sniffing 1992 in terms of being born, but that's neither here nor there. In fact, early investors already received over 30% internal rate of return in 2020 and 2021 from the sale of just 2 paintings. And this is your opportunity to join 300,000 other members and invest like the GOAT. Plus, you can get priority access with our game day promo. Go to masterworks.art/believe. That's masterworks.art/believe to go on over and get your priority access with our game day promo. See important disclosures at masterworks.io/disclaimer. New sponsor. Did you like the investment, tagline went right in? You talked a little bit longer than I thought.
That's why you're here. That's why you're here. You do it better than anyone else. That's why you're here, Mike. You are here simply because you can segue in, read them, and segue out of ad reads better than anyone I know.
That's right. And because when the Pistons and Cavaliers inevitably face off in the Eastern Conference Finals in a couple years, we'll have somebody to get angry on the podcast and kick you off.
That's fine.
Yeah.
I will be
That's
happy
fine.
if that happens, because the 2 teams that I am invested in, one of them is going to go to the NBA Finals.
Well, there you go.
So
Okay.
that's a very good chance of going to.
There we go. That's an investment with nothing to lose. I think we've got a new
Right.
GOAT in town.
Yeah, the problem is that I decided to invest in Detroit sports, which maybe I could go back to school and learn about
Like
what
the
kind
only
of investments to make.
the only worst investment you could make is an investment in Cleveland sports.
Yeah, because the Cavaliers have rocketed from the laughingstock team of Cleveland to the team in Cleveland with the only good chance of going into the playoffs and winning a game. They have completely gone from the bottom to the top. Poor Browns. Actually, not really the Browns. I mean, I still saw people on my timeline talk about Baker Mayfield in the middle of the NBA trading deadline. I don't get it. I don't get it. Browns fans are infatuated with sadness, and in any way that they can keep up the sadness, they will do it.
Well, there's some Pistons fans that I don't know, maybe don't seem sad, but seem pretty upset because the Pistons held on to Jerami Grant. Like
they did, and I think we were all bracing for something like this. I think there was a healthy majority of Pistons fans who were ready to see him get traded, especially after he shot, I think, like 5 for 16 against Dallas, and the Pistons got absolutely taken to the woodshed. And they had kind of seen enough. And I will admit, some of those mid-range jumpers, I was kind of ready to not see any more of that either. But, at the end of the day, Aaron's bold prediction, well before the deadline, came true. So the Pistons did not trade Jerami Grant at the deadline. Portland, Sacramento, Washington showed a lot of interest. Washington being the most interesting. They may have been interested, and then when the Pistons said, no, we don't want KCP and scraps, while Aaron may have accepted KCP and scraps because of his love for Contavious Caldwell-Pope, Washington obviously pivoted and then actually, I think, hosed the Mavericks big time. Portland and Sacramento also very interested in Jerami Grant, and that's not to say that those teams won't explore that possibility in the offseason either. The Pistons were reportedly asking for 2 first-round draft picks or an equivalent young player in return for Jerami Grant. And as I believe Shams Charania of The Athletic noted, the Pistons and Grant were both very comfortable remaining together. I'm picturing like on a big fluffy couch headed into the offseason where a trade or a 4-year extension will be discussed later. And I think any team that was going to be trading for Jerami was going to be handing him that 4-year, $112 million extension. So, guys, Jerami Grant didn't get traded. He's still on the team. There's been a lot of back and forth on he doesn't want to get traded to he would welcome a move to whatever team wants to trade for him needs to understand that he wants to be the primary option. And that, I don't know how true that is or how much value, was being put into that. Aaron, you were the first to really say, hey, slow down, everybody. Before we trade Jerami Grant for Cam Reddish and Bojan Bogdanovic, we might keep him. What are your thoughts in the Pistons keeping Grant at the deadline?
I'm certainly not surprised by it. Grant has a lot of fans inside Detroit's front office. I know there was the discussions about Arntellum wanting to move on from Grant and this and that, but it's not just Troy Weaver that likes what Jerami Grant brings to the table. He has a lot of fans throughout the Pistons franchise, and he is still a valuable player. I think it's funny the dichotomy on Twitter is Jerami Grant's awful, but then there's the expectation that you're going to get someone like Portland's best asset in Anthony Simons, or, you're going to get these other teams' top picks or top young players. But Jerami Grant is a bad player and doesn't help the Pistons and this or that. It just really doesn't make sense. And again, just to go back to it, I'm not surprised by the Pistons keeping Grant. He provides value to them. It's important to have good veterans on the court, not just guys that maybe are good vets in the locker room, but don't really provide any value on the court. And that's not the case with Grant. He is still a valuable player. I know that he's had not a great year, but I certainly think that something like being in trade talks is something that can affect your play. And it's not like the Pistons have a ton of talent around him. It's going to take time for Grant and guys like Cade Cunningham and Saddiq Bey all to figure out how to mesh together. And the Pistons simply just have not been healthy enough this season to really be able to allow for that to happen. The other thing is Detroit still can move Grant. They can trade him in the offseason. It's a player that could be moved on draft day. He's going to always have suitors. So I'm not that concerned that the Pistons didn't trade Grant. I again was someone that was like, unless you're going to get that big offer, which for Detroit, I guess, was 2 first-round draft picks or a young piece and a pick that was equivalent. They weren't going to make that move unless, you got that type of offer. Then I guess, if that's the direction you want to go, make that trade. But I'm not surprised that the Pistons kept Grant. I think it was ultimately the right move, especially if they weren't getting the type of offers that they were hoping for. And we'll see what happens. I mean, there's still, 30 or whatever games left this year for him and Cade Cunningham and Saddiq Bey to try to figure things out if Cade Cunningham could get back out on the court with this right hip pointer issue.
Yeah, Aaron, I'm with you. Like, I was somebody who said I wanted them to make a Jerami Grant trade, but only if the price was right. And clearly the price wasn't right for Troy Weaver. They weren't getting back what they wanted. You weren't going to get Simons from Portland, and Nas Little and a first-round pick doesn't cut it. So, like, the 2 picks from the Nets, that doesn't cut it. So I thought that, yeah, it was the right move. If the trade packages weren't there, then why would you move on from a player that still obviously has a lot of suitors? A lot of teams that are interested will still have a lot of value next year as an expiring contract and a wing player, which everybody needs come playoffs. Everybody can use a Jerami Grant type on their team, and they will still need a Jerami Grant type next season. So it's not like the trade market's going to dry up for him. And I saw a lot of people also saying, oh, well, this is the highest his trade value is ever going to be. I could not disagree more. I think this is actually probably the lowest his trade value is ever going to be because he's not playing well. This is the worst he's played in several seasons. So look, if he can get some consistency going into the end of the season or get some consistency going into next season when the Pistons hopefully have a more complete roster, when they hopefully have some continuity with Cade Cunningham as their starting point guard and Jerami Grant as their starting power forward. The hope, I think, is you say, if it works and we're good, then we'll hold on to Jerami Grant. And if it doesn't work, well, then fine, we'll move on. And there's still going to be teams that are going to want a borderline elite help side defender who can cut, who can dunk, who can switch essentially like 3 through 5, but can reasonably stay ahead of 1s and 2s on defense. Yeah, there's no reason. Like, you can even give him the extension if you're going to be taking large steps forward as a franchise and he's going to be a big part of that. I don't really have an issue with it. So, Aaron, you were ahead of the rest of us on this one. And I think your reasoning was correct. And I think ultimately that was the same reasoning that the Pistons front office had. So kudos to you. And look, I'd rather, like I said, have the guy be on the team if the trade packages aren't right, then trade him just for the sake of trading. That doesn't make sense.
Absolutely. And, Aaron actually swayed my thinking. I was all in favor of, okay, get rid of him. Cade's obviously the next coming. Jeremy's not going to be the primary option next year. Is it possible that Jerami Grant was just exceeding expectations last year? I mean, I'm looking at his numbers here. The Pistons were +4 when he was on the court. They're -1 now. Is it possible he just kind of outplayed his own expectations and what our expectations were last year?
But even if he did, that's fine, because you're not, a team that's trading for Jerami Grant is not going to be expecting him to be, I should not be expecting him to be playing a one role on offense. He should not be, he's
Absolutely.
going to be the third option on any contending team. Like at best, he's the third option.
At best,
and we've seen him in that role before for the Denver Nuggets, and he was fantastic. That's why he got the $20 million from Detroit. And it's why Denver also wanted to pay him $20 million a year for the exact same role. So people saying like, oh, he's not worth that, I completely disagree. And guess what? Multiple teams in the league also disagree with that. So yeah, he will have at that price point suitors next season. He has to, because he already did.
And one other thing.
I'm sorry, go ahead, Aaron.
Whether Grant, wants it to be that way or not, and I think that Grant wants to be the top option stuff that we've seen reported is certainly overblown, because that's not the type of talk that we've heard from the Pistons whatsoever. And Jerami Grant hasn't given off that sort of, I guess, for lack of a better term, vibe so far. I mean, he certainly takes the most shots on the team when he's out there, but it's not him coming out and saying like, yeah, I'm the number one option. I need to be getting all these sets run for me. Nothing like that. But whether he desires it to be this way or not, but once Cade Cunningham gets healthy, and especially next year when Cade Cunningham is going into his second season and the Pistons have another top pick entering the fold, it's not going to be as clear cut of Jerami Grant being the number one option. Cade Cunningham is going to be the number one guy, and it might already end up being that once he comes back this year, but he certainly will be next year, no matter if Jerami Grant's on the roster or not. That's something that's going to, I think, make Jerami Grant a little bit better overall, is he's not going to have all that pressure of being the number one guy. And the unfortunate thing for him this year is he hasn't really had that opportunity to share the floor with a guy that can also be the number one option. A guy like Cade Cunningham can be that. You add in someone like Paolo Banchero or Chet Holmgren or Jabari Smith. Those guys are all going to take shots. They're all going to take possessions. And, that's important to note too. Like Jerami Grant's role is going to diminish offensively a little bit as time goes on, which should allow him to be maximized on the other side of the floor and maximize what he really is best at on the offensive side.
Yeah. Aaron, you know what? It's like, Jerami Grant might want to be the number one offensive option for the Pistons. But in the words of Omar Little from The Wire, the game is the game. And in the words of Marlo from The Wire, you want it to be one way, but it's not. It's another way. And the way it is that Cade Cunningham is the star of this team. Whoever they draft, if it's a top 3 pick, that guy will be one of the stars of this team. And Jerami Grant simply isn't going to be the primary option. So, frankly, I like the guy, and I do think those reports are overblown. But the fact of the matter is, it doesn't matter if he wants to be the first option or he doesn't, because he's not going to be.
So I was just looking to see the lineups with Grant and Cade Cunningham in at the same time. And Killian Hayes, Cade Cunningham, Sadiq, Grant, and Isaiah Stewart, that lineup has played 473 possessions together. Their point differential is -17.
Ouch.
I don't know particularly why exactly.
I would guess, Mike, it's probably because a lot of those minutes came right at the beginning of when Cade came back, because Jerami and Cade haven't played very much together. And the Pistons were truly horrible.
That's why I searched it, because I don't remember them playing a whole lot. It had to be at the beginning when Cade didn't quite have his feet underneath him.
Mm-hmm.
The second lineup with Grant and Cunningham is Corey Joseph, Cade, Sadiq, Jeremy, and Isaiah Stewart. That was 123 possessions at minus 14 point differential.
Yikes.
So, I mean, it takes a little while to get to a positive one. The first positive lineup is Killian, Cade, Sadiq Bey, Jerami Grant, and Trey Lyles at the 5. I assume because of the stretchiness, they're a plus 10 in 44 possessions. So the sample size is just not there. We basically we just need to see them on the court together. I mean, Cade and Jerami Grant make sense. We talked about having Grant as a small ball 5 just to get some offense going. So he's not traded. I would be surprised if he was even held into the draft, depending on how he plays to finish the year out. He has not played that well this year. All of his numbers are noticeably worse, particularly the offensive numbers. I think the defensive numbers are still okay. They are still pretty good. The offensive numbers are not good. His points per possession when he's on the floor is not. It's just not good. It's a byproduct of the team really being like trash too. But I would not be surprised if they keep him past the draft. And some people had said, well, why would you keep him at all? Why not just trade him at the deadline? And Jasper, you're exactly right. Why would you trade him now? His value can really only get better. There's no team that was going to give up 2 first-round picks for Jerami Grant at this current stage with him playing the way he's playing, dealt with an injury. Shot does not look quite there. The isolation numbers are noticeably worse than last year. No one was going to give you 2 first-round picks. And if they were, well, they might be the Sacramento Kings or the Knicks, just like some team that's obviously incredibly desperate. Guys, do you feel kind of the same way? I mean, do you think this is going to just drag out past the draft as well into next year at the deadline?
I mean, like I said, they could deal him in the summer. They could trade him at the draft. I think that's what was talked about, after the deadline passed. James Edward talked about it. James Edward III talked about it in his piece on The Athletic, but that's something that Detroit could do then. But I don't think Detroit should be in a rush to move him. And I think that this core group of guys deserves that opportunity to continue to see what they can do together, because they really have not had that opportunity. So take the small sample size at the beginning of the year with Cade getting his legs under him, Sadiq and his shooting slump. I just think that they deserve a better opportunity and a little bit more time.
Yeah, same. I honestly have no clue. I think a lot of it depends where the Pistons fall in the draft. I think a lot of it depends on how Jerami looks with Cade coming back from this hip pointer injury. Like you said about just running through the possessions, there just isn't enough of a sample size to really figure out, what this team could/should look like with Jerami and Cade and Killian and all those different guys for the Pistons right now. And especially when Marvin Bagley is in the rotation as well, there's a chance that's going to affect things too. So,
what about?
I will say this: if he's with them past the trade, leading up to the next year's trade deadline, I think you have to extend him at that point. You can't let him walk away for nothing.
Oh no.
I'd rather keep him. I'd rather keep him going into his age 31, age 32 season on a similar value deal, because I do think his game will age fine going into his early 30s. But yeah, you can't let him walk.
And you obviously pick best player available in the draft. You don't care about if you have the number 1 overall pick. You're not making any sacrifices because of positional overlap.
Hell no.
Of course not. The Cavs are a good example of why you shouldn't care at all about positional overlap. It'll work fine. Okay, guys, that was the Jerami Grant talk. I was prepping for a trade. I was going through all my notes in my head in the middle of the work shift, trying to get ready to mentally prepare the questions and things. And I even started to draft up the article for Palace of Pistons of report Jerami Grant traded to blank, or the Pistons trade Jerami Grant to, and then I was just going to leave it blank.
Mike, of course, you tried your best and you failed. The lesson is never try.
That's an excellent point. Never try. I was doing well at that. I was like, I'm going to get ahead. I pumped out the Marvin Bagley trade, and of course, my internet just failed me. Failed me. If only I had a VPN. And I hear people say that VPNs have a reputation for slowing down your internet, but not with our sponsor, NordVPN, because it's the fastest VPN in the world. I don't have to sacrifice internet speed for better security. And with NordVPN, my internet traffic is routed through a secure encrypted tunnel, which protects my data and privacy. I can also have NordVPN on up to 6 devices, laptops, phones, smart TVs, iPads, even your router. So all of the devices are protected. It's equivalent to buying a cup of coffee every month, a small price to pay for premium cybersecurity and access to vast amounts of entertaining content. There's a 30-day money-back guarantee. If NordVPN is not for you, so there is no risk. Grab your exclusive NordVPN deal by going to nordvpn.com/Bleav. That's BLEAV. Or use the code BLEAV, BLEAV, to get up to 70% off your NordVPN plan, plus 1 additional month free. So if you're looking for premium security while maintaining high internet speeds, make sure to check out today's sponsor, NordVPN. Again, that's nordvpn.com/Bleav, BLEAV, or use the code BLEAV for up to 70% off your VPN plan, plus 1 additional month for free. Guys, other things happened besides the Marvin Bagley trade. As crazy as that may sound, other teams made moves.
Yeah, let's run through these smaller trades.
Yes, let's start with the smallest trade. The Brooklyn Nets traded James Harden to the Philadelphia 76ers for Ben Simmons, Seth Curry, Andre Drummond. There we go, Pistons, and 2 first-round picks. That is according to, I believe, Shams Charania had it first, but ESPN's Adrian Wojnarowski also had it.
Shams, Mike, I was gonna say Shams was beating Woj's ass all day, up and down the court.
I put that in the group chat. It got glazed over. Shams came out of nowhere and was all over Woj the whole time. Impressive work. But regardless, the Nets traded James Harden to the 76ers for Ben Simmons, and maybe one of the worst kept secrets in the last 3 days. Just kind of dependent on what pieces we're going to be going with Ben. We now know that's Seth Curry and Andre Drummond, and 2 first-round picks, which I'm surprised the Nets did not reroute to add another piece. I really thought for a moment that those 2 picks were coming to Detroit, since that was the asking price for Jerami Grant. Guys, that's a mega blockbuster trade. And personally, I feel like both teams get better. They fill particular needs. I mean, Kyrie Irving getting vaccinated makes this a huge win for the Brooklyn Nets. But even without that happening, and only having half of a Kyrie Irving, Ben Simmons is still, I think, a very good fit with the Brooklyn Nets. The defense, the playmaking, you have Kevin Durant. You get Seth Curry, which is huge. You get a good backup big in Andre Drummond, and then 2 more first-round picks that you could use in the offseason to retool and add something else. So I think the Nets did really well. And, the Sixers, they get a pick-and-roll partner with Joel Embiid that sounds like a burning hellscape to try and guard. Joel Embiid is having an MVP-type season, and you add James Harden in there while aging and dealing with a hamstring injury. Still a very capable player, a very good player, maybe the best isolation scorer ever. So, to me, this is a trade that helped both sides. One of the rare trades where superstars are swapped and both teams, I think, are for the better.
I agree. I saw Twitter reacting in kind of all 3 ways. I saw some people agree with me when I tweeted. I thought that trade helped both teams. I saw others saying the Nets won it. I saw others saying the Sixers won it. I'm on firm belief that both sides got better from that deal. Ben Simmons wasn't going to suit up for the Sixers, so the Sixers ended up getting one of the best players in the NBA when he's locked in and playing. And I think they should be elated about that. And they did it without having to give up Tyrese Maxey or Matisse Thybulle. And I think that's a big deal too, because Maxey probably is your starter, starting guard alongside Harden, and Thybulle probably is your starting wing, or he's a key reserve piece with that group. So, they lost a shooter in Seth Curry, but they're not going to cry over having to give up Andre Drummond. Like, they have the best center in the league. They can sacrifice a little bit of depth behind him to go get James Harden, to get a maybe not MVP caliber player anymore, but still an all-star level player, a star level player when he's healthy and playing. And it's a great move for them. And for Brooklyn, they get a guy in Ben Simmons who, when he suits up, is probably going to fit pretty damn well in Brooklyn. They're going to need his defensive intensity. He's a guy that can finish under the rim. When KD's isolating, he's a guy that, can distribute the basketball, draw people off of shooters like Seth Curry, like Kevin Durant, like Patty Mills. Like, it should really help them on both sides of the floor. They get some necessary depth in Andre Drummond, and Seth Curry's a great shooter as well. So I think that was just an excellent deal for both sides. I don't think really either side lost that trade.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, look, hey, the 76ers got James Harden, former MVP. They traded away a bunch of role players and a guy who wasn't going to play for them anymore. And then you look at the Nets, and they go out there and they acquire, a former All-Star, All-NBA player, a guy who has received Defensive Player of the Year votes before, one of the most, the best passing big men in the game, somebody who moves with surprising grace and fluidity for a player that's 6'10". But enough about Andre Drummond. They also got Ben Simmons, and that was pretty good too.
This guy, I tell you,
that was
I couldn't help myself.
That was like a Family Guy level setup where it took like 8 minutes to get to the joke, and then the joke happens, and we're all like, "Oh."
I could not help myself. No, I agree with you, Aaron. I do think this was one of those trades where both teams definitely got better. The reason, the Nets get those 2 first-round picks is because the Sixers wouldn't give up Maxey or Thybulle. And look, if I'm the Sixers, that was the right move. I'll give up a 2022 first-rounder and a heavily protected first that's probably going to turn into a couple of seconds in a few years. I will absolutely, positively take that if I am the Nets, and I'll also take it if I'm the 76ers. One of those rare superstar trades where both teams get better. Because usually when it happens, one team is having to offload their disgruntled superstar for lesser pieces, like Carmelo Anthony is a good example of that when he was traded from the Nuggets. And this is one of those rare cases where both teams had a disgruntled superstar they had to offload. So it actually worked out. And I have to say, it was fun to rip on him, but Daryl Morey vindicated at last. He held on to Ben Simmons, saying he wanted a superstar in return, and he got that superstar. So you have to say credit to him. And Ben Simmons also got a trade to a team that he wanted it to. So, it was fun to mess with both of them, but ultimately it actually worked out for both sides.
It did, yeah. And, Aaron talked about Ben impacting the defensive side of things. And the Nets defense is not good. It's not good. It's 22nd in the league in points per possession, 27th in turnover percentage, 26th in offensive rebounding percentage.
You know who's really good at at forcing turnovers and offensive rebounding? Andre Drummond, who's probably going to be their starting center now, right? Like, he should be. He's still the best offensive rebounder in the NBA.
He is playing well. I mean, he played well in limited time behind Joel Embiid. He did.
I mean, he currently leads the league in rebounding percentage. He also is second in the league in offensive rebounding percentage. I mean, he's actually having his best rebounding season, by per the minute of his entire career. So he's a guy that kind of falls under the radar in this trade. I do think this is a great situation for him. And he's a much more consistent option than like Nick Claxton has been for them this season. So I thought it worked for multiple reasons, not just because I got Simmons.
What is the pain level at if Blake Griffin, Bruce Brown, and Andre Drummond win a ring with the Brooklyn Nets?
It won't be because of two of them. I mean, Drummond can impact that, but it won't be because two-thirds of them are not going to play a factor in them winning that title. So does it matter? I mean, I don't think
that was my question for you. Does it matter?
I don't think it does, because I don't think Bruce Brown and I don't think Blake Griffin are going to be in the playoff rotation.
Oh no, they're going to need to throw Bruce Brown out there as like a small ball 5 at some point during the Eastern Conference semifinals. Just you wait, Aaron.
I don't even know. Has he been playing for them? Like I've watched a handful in that team.
Oh yeah,
he plays. Yeah, he's an important part of that other team. I do.
When they're healthy, is he playing?
If they need somebody to be like a weird small ball 5, they will do. They did against the Bucks last year. I couldn't see them doing it again this year. Why not? Okay. Yeah, he's a good defender for, especially at his size. And if they need some rebounding out there, they can't necessarily rely on Drummond all the time. I definitely think he could get some playing time for them.
He is averaging 19 minutes a game.
Yeah, he's going to get some run for him. But still, no, it wouldn't hurt. I would love to see Bruce Brown and Blake Griffin and Andre Drummond all win titles. That would be nice.
Also forgot about Paul Millsap. He is also in this trade.
Okay. Yeah, sure.
Forgot about that. Moving on to the next big trade that this actually came out of nowhere. We all kind of suspected, there's too much smoke for there to not be fire for Harden and Ben Simmons. But the Mavericks traded Kristaps Porzingis to the Washington Wizards for a package centered around Spencer Dinwiddie, and we would come to learn that it would also include Davis Bertans, and the Mavericks would also send out, I believe, a second-round draft pick to the Washington Wizards. Actually came out of nowhere. I was not expecting that. We heard a little bit about Dinwiddie being on the outs with Washington. The Wizards already traded Montrezl Harrell. They already traded Aaron Holiday. They were really looking like they were just going to dump the team and start over with Beal. Both Washington and Portland are both on this. Every year they like play well for a little bit or do something interesting in the offseason to build around their big star. In this case, Damian Lillard and Bradley Beal. And then every deadline, it's always like, well, what are they going to do? Is Beal going to ask out? Is Dame going to ask out? Every year for the last 3 years, I feel. The Wizards have actually leaned into it a little bit more. They immediately moved on from Spencer Dinwiddie. They get Kristaps Porzingis. And I initially thought, what in the heck are the Washington Wizards doing? And then I thought about it more and saw that Davis Bertans is in the trade and thought, that is a very good trade by the Washington Wizards. Even if Kristaps Porzingis does not play the rest of the season, which they should not, let his knee rest the entire time, come back 100% with Beal. They offloaded 2 horrific contracts in Spencer Dinwiddie and Bertans for 1 horrendous contract in Kristaps Porzingis.
Well,
Guys, what do we think about this trade?
I disagree that that's a horrible contract for Porzingis. I think Porzingis is still a good player. He's, like Tim Legler said, he's called the unicorn because you almost never see him. But like
Tim Legler, I don't see him too often in Twitter videos. When I do, I feel like he's blasting somebody through concrete.
Oh, I love Tim Legler. Him and Candace Parker and JJ Redick, all 3 of my favorite NBA personalities. I will say
JJ Redick's going to put Stephen A. Smith into retirement quickly. I don't know why Stephen A. keeps bringing him on the show.
He's going to put him in a casket He's going to put him in a casket like the Undertaker, man. That's what he's going to do. No, I thought this was a great trade from Washington's perspective. They, like you said, they offloaded 2 deals that they didn't want to hold on to. Kickstarts their rebuilding process already. This wasn't working. They got Beal out for the rest of the season. You go in, you go, all right, we're going to go get our good draft pick. We're going to come back next year with a new draft pick. new signings. We're going to have money. We're going to have Kristaps. We're going to have Bradley Beal, probably, maybe, possibly. And for me, though, I look at the Dallas Mavericks and I am blown away. This is a nonsensical deal from my perspective. This makes it harder for them to re-sign Jalen Brunson, especially now that they just re-signed Dorian Finney-Smith with a 4-year, $52 million deal. I understand that they needed another ball handler outside of Luka and Brunson, but dude, I mean, Dinwiddie has been horrible this year. He's shooting 37% from the floor. He's been awful. And he was obviously, I don't know what the issue was in that locker room in Washington, but he was part of the problem there. I just do not understand this. They got worse and they potentially hamstrung themselves moving forward with Jalen Brunson. As a Pistons fan, I like it because it actually makes it easier for the Pistons to go after Brunson in the offseason.
Yes, it does.
But when I look at this from the Mavericks perspective, did Luka say, I need this guy gone about Kristaps? Because that's the only thing that makes sense to me.
That's the only thing that I could possibly get out of it as well, is that they were just appeasing Luka Doncic, which, if that's the case, fine.
Yeah, Aaron, what do you think about this? Because I'm wondering if you have a different perspective on it, because for me, it doesn't make sense.
So I do have a different perspective on it. I actually don't mind it for Dallas. I think getting rid of Porzingis was getting rid of something that you needed to do. Like, he just wasn't helping them. Half the problem was he wasn't on the court. He was never on the court. And the hope is that Spencer Dinwiddie can come in, and I feel like he's probably going to play with the second unit. I don't think he should start over Brunson, but it gives you a guy that can handle the basketball when Luka Doncic isn't on the court, can initiate the offense, can be a scoring threat. The fit in Washington wasn't there for him. It wasn't great, but he has a track record of playing good basketball. So the hope is that he turns it around. I don't think his contract is terrible because I think he can be a productive basketball player. I'm not so sure about Bertans, but shoot, if you could get him to just come back and shoot the ball, I mean, that would be a huge, huge help for Luka Doncic. Just to have that extra shooting around him is so, so important. So I think they just needed to rid themselves of Porzingis, and, maybe he goes to Washington and he gets healthy and he figures it out. But from Dallas's perspective, I think it was shedding, dead skin that you didn't need, and you didn't get great players back, but you've got to hope that Dinwiddie can just be a ball handler when Luka's not on the court. Obviously, they want to start Jalen Brunson. They want to play him a lot of minutes because he's been playing very well, and he plays pretty well with Luka on the court. Those two just both play well together. So if you can have Dinwiddie running that second unit, he's a scoring threat. He's a guy that could start some games for you if necessary. I just don't know if he's going to really need to with both Brunson and Doncic in your starting lineup. So I don't hate the trade. I don't think the Dinwiddie contract is as bad as something like the Bertans contract, but if Bertans can get healthy and space the floor for you, get somewhere back to the player he was that earned that massive payday, that would be a huge help. And it's certainly a gamble, but heck, they were paying Porzingis to not step on the court essentially, and they needed to try something else. So you weren't going to get amazing value for Porzingis. It was going to be a risky move, and I think there is some upside to the deal.
Man, I just don't know, man. Like Bertans, he's completely washed. I have zero hope for Bertans. Even if he's shooting well, defensively, he's such a liability. You can't play him. You can't even play him in the regular season anymore, to be honest, let alone the playoffs. Like, forget about it. As for Dinwiddie, yeah, maybe he does rediscover some of his form, but even then, like, he has been, like, yeah, you say Porzingis hasn't been on the floor. Well, yeah, Porzingis not on the floor has been better than Dinwiddie on the floor this year. So
he's been pretty bad.
He's been awful. He's been really, really, really bad. And there's just no way around that. So I guess for me, I'd rather take the lot. I mean, scratch off the lottery ticket that is Porzingis will be healthy for the playoffs than bet on Bertans and Dinwiddie in this season. But hey, who knows? Maybe it was just a fit thing with Spencer. And now that he's in Dallas, it'll be a better situation. So, who knows?
And one of the other problems with that trade to me is Spencer Dinwiddie needs the ball in his hands. I can't wait for him to bring the ball to the floor, look off Luka Doncic, and just dribble out all the air in the basketball. He's a guy that needs the ball in his hands, and he didn't like being on the floor when Bradley Beal would dominate possessions. Bro, you are now with and I really hate this term, the most heliocentric player maybe in the entire league right now in Luka Doncic. And you will have to play off the ball because they're not taking the ball out of his hands.
Yeah, but I think you can play. I think the way you can stagger it is have him and Brunson really handle, pretty much all the ball handling duties when Luka's not on the floor.
Yeah, that's what it's going to have to be.
I mean, that's 14 minutes a game. So it's something,
right?
And I think you can trust Brunson, especially, to play off ball as well. So I don't know. I think you can make it work from a ball handling perspective. I mean, let's not get it twisted. The Mavericks needed another ball handler. That was a need for them. Desperately.
That's why I just think it was worth it. I just think it was worth Porzingis wasn't playing for you, so it was worth it to just take a shot on something. And if you get lucky and one of those guys can figure their games back out, it's an instant win for you because the fit just wasn't there with Porzingis for them between him meshing with Doncic and his health issues. So if you can get one of those guys to play well, I think it was worth it for Dallas at this point. I mean,
are they still the front runner to get Goran Dragic?
I don't know. Are they now?
No way.
I heard nothing after that initial report after Dragic was traded. I only saw that the Mavericks are the favorite, and then nothing for now 7 or 8 hours.
That would make no sense. They'd have that would make no sense for them to go get Dragic now.
Well, interestingly enough, the Heat were not listed as one of the teams that wanted Goran Dragic, which I think is hilarious. But yeah, I guess it makes no sense for them to be in that. I think Utah was on that list as well. Anyway, we got through the deadline. Unscathed, just one Marvin Bagley scratch, and nothing else really. Sad to see Trey Lyles go. I mean, I just saw Tim Forkin on Twitter say he misses Trey Lyles already, so that must mean the Pistons are getting boomed by the Memphis Grizzlies and not shooting the ball well.
You are correct.
They are. They're down.
They are getting
points.
smoked. They barely have cracked 30 points, and we're almost at the end of the second quarter. So yeah.
Maybe the
it's
world
ugly.
Is, continuing to heal.
Suffice it to say, Mike, I took the under tonight.
That was a good job. Mm-hmm. Good job on your part. Last thing before we go, of course, the Lakers did not make a trade. Actually, there were some really puzzling teams that didn't make a trade. The Bulls, the Hawks, the Lakers, the Knicks, they all stood still at the deadline, maybe accepting their fates as teams that are either going to get healthy and be better later in the case of the Bulls, or the Knicks, their team kind of sucks, and the Lakers admitted defeat with Russell Westbrook not playing him at all yesterday against Portland. But LeBron James and Kevin Durant drafted their teams for the All-Star game, and LeBron took Darius Garland. Just leave that in the ether and then run away.
He's coming home.
And not
He's coming home.
It's very LeBron to go completely scorched earth, kill every asset on his team, and then leave. He left the Cavs cupboard entirely empty with nothing left except the shell of the pick from the Celtics that turned into Colin Sexton, and then he bolted. So we'll just leave that into the E3. He did pick Darius Garland as his reserve pick. So we'll leave that and not talk about it anymore. We'll let all of the Twitter investigators do that. The same people who were tracking down Dan Gilbert's personal plane flying from Cleveland to Miami in that one summer. Guys, any other thoughts on the deadline before we wrap up this extra long podcast?
No, I mean, it was a good deadline. There were some good trades. I'm definitely interested to see Philadelphia and Brooklyn moving forward. I think everyone's kind of fixated on that, and rightfully so. That was definitely a landscape shaking move. So excited to see how that plays out. I think everything else was, nothing that was going to really change the league as teams just kind of jostle for position. But that trade definitely the most interesting. So excited to see how that plays out in the Eastern Conference. Those two could potentially end up meeting each other in the conference finals, which would just be so perfect.
Yeah, I threw a couple bucks on the 76ers plus 1,000 championship odds. Just putting it out there. That's all I got.
All right, guys. Thank you very much for joining me once again, and thank you to our sponsors, Bet Online. As always, you can head on over to their new site, sign up, use the promo code BELIEVE50, and get your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. We'd also like to thank Masterworks as well. Go to masterworks.com, masterworks.art/believe to get started there, and then NordVPN as well, using the code BELIEVE to get up to 70% off your NordVPN plan, plus one additional month free. So thank you. And thank you to my co-hosts, of course, Aaron Johnson, Jasper Apollonia. This has been the latest episode of the Palace of Pistons podcast. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll see you all next time.